Sometime around the 18th century, the Giovani wanted a foothold in the markets of the New World. But all their attempts were constantly blocked by a Scottish family of bankers, who owned several shipping ventures. Impressed by their financial acumen, the Giovani investigated bringing the family into the fold. What closed the deal was the discovery that the Dunsirn were cannibals, as well as financiers. It was the perfect balance of money, depravity, and the ability to keep a secret. For centuries, the relationship between the two families was clear. The Dunsirn made the money, and the Giovani spent it like water. Surprisingly, even though mortal members of the Dunsirn family still indulge in the occasional bit of long pork, the kindred don't show much aptitude or interest in necromantic pursuits. Prior to the family reunion, there was an effort to force them into learning the ways of oblivion. But now the Dunsirn are happy to go back to what they do best, bleeding people dry. Greetings, kindred. Welcome back to our World of Darkness. I am Voivode Maquette, and today we are doing the long-awaited return to Loresheets. We are going to be going over the various lore sheets in the player's guide in this playlist, starting with the Bankers of Dunsirn, who are actually one of my favorite of the bloodlines of Clan Giovani. Now, for those of you who do not know how these lore sheets work, typically you are only allowed one lore sheet per character in a Vampire the Masquerade Chronicle by the rules that are raw. Rules as written in the book. Now, these bloodlines are a little bit of a step to the side of that core rule, because these do not count as something that blends in with the story of Vampire the Masquerade. This is something that fleshes out the character. Now, hopefully we will see something like this similar to, for other clans, the ability to have something that fleshes out, makes your character more detailed, gives you a bloodline, something like that. But for now, unfortunately, at the time of this filming, only the Hecata have something special in this manner. So, let's go ahead and look at what the individual things are that you can get for this lore sheet. You do not have to buy these in order. Just like all of the lore sheets, you can buy any of these in any order you want. You can buy 5, you can buy 2, you can buy just 3. Buy them however you want. But they are part of your background points. So, take that into consideration when you're putting a lore sheet on your character. That being said, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Money obfuscates. It's hard to make money and not be noticed, but the Dunsirn have worked in the shadows for centuries. You've spread some of your family's money around to make an alternate identity for yourself. You get 2 dots of the mask background for free, though you must maintain this mask at least once per story. So, you have decided to take some of the money that you get being a Dunsirn to giving yourself an alternate identity. This can be used in Kindred Society by not introducing yourself directly as a Dunsirn, and if anybody does a background check, they can basically have a limit to what they can try to find. This might very well stop people to finding out what you are, and then possibly your true intentions. If used in a mortal facility, the idea that you can give yourself a different identity altogether when interacting with your allies, with your contacts, with any sphere of influence that you happen to be involved in, this is incredibly helpful if you're trying to maintain secrecy and you know other people might try to look in on what is happening. This is a good thing. 2-point mask is something that's fairly useful. And there's nothing that stops you from spending extra XP on this at character creation or later to solidify that mask even harder. You are lucky enough to have someone that has set this up for you unless you have the cobbler merit yourself. The cobbler advantage in this allows you to create your own alternate identity. But in this case, this is a stepping stone in that direction. So you do have to maintain that contact. Just in case anybody decides to check in on influence and stuff, they could actually go, do you know this person? Oh yeah, we talk all the time. You have to give them that kind of background. You have to give them that kind of story to utilize in this game. Money talks. The Dunsirn find information in the most interesting places. All you have to do is spread a little money around, and people jump out of the woodwork to tell you things. Once per story, you can find information as if you had the contact's background, with a number of dots equal to your resources. This ability lasts for a single scene. So, basically what this one is saying is, if you throw enough money around, you can get information. You can act as if you have contacts. In this way, I would say that the influence that contact falls under is really up to your desire. It does say that your influence rating, your contact rating, will go up to the resource level that you have. That is very, very useful. It lets you spread out and become more diverse. As a storyteller, I personally, if you have an interaction like that with somebody of a contact sphere of influence, I tend to say that that's a good way to open up a relationship with someone so that you can continue to utilize them. They know that you're good for it. This does last. You can only do this once per story, and it only lasts for a single scene. But that single scene really is all you need to get the information, as long as you have the questions that you need ready as you go. So keep that in mind. Don't walk into a situation blind. Do some planning. Be a Dunsirn. Money enhances. You always have access to the best that money can buy. Having access to quality products not only acts as a status symbol, it also makes everything a little easier. When making a roll in which you can use your own equipment, you get a bonus die to the roll. This one's a lot of fun. First off, I love the idea of it just being the status symbol. What really brings up, like, what comes to mind when I think about that is the person walking around with the Starbucks cup, but they're holding it just so that the label is out, so somebody knows that they spent a little bit more money on coffee. It's so stupid. But the idea that you have spent enough money to buy the best to help out with what you're doing is important. Mechanically speaking, what this does is it gives you an extra die to add to skill pools, because your character only buys the best. Now, there are so many ways that you can take this into consideration. Your drive skill goes up because you have a better car. Your firearms goes up because you bought a better gun. Your ability to use larceny to break into a building is better because instead of having the little lock picks that everybody's used to, you have one of those like police issued like crank gun lock picks that makes things a lot easier. Performance. You bought better sound equipment. Crafts. You bought the best paint, the best paint brushes, the best material to sculpt with. The applications of this is wildly up to your own imagination. But effectively, as long as you are using a skill, if you have this lore sheet, you get an extra dice. It doesn't mean you're going to crank out crits every time, but it does give you that extra dice that does help you in those situations. Money multiplies. All the Hecata know the Dunsirn are bankers, but most of them think of it in the abstract as if banker is just a different way of saying someone with a lot of money. but you are, or are directly related to, a legitimate investment banker. Gain 3 dots up to 5 in resources. In addition, anyone in your coterie loses the destitute flaw and can purchase dots and resources at 2 experience points per dot instead of the usual 3. This one's interesting because it does not affect you. It affects, well, it does affect you, but it also affects your coterie. The fact that you get extra money up to a 5 is great. Money's great. The concept of resources in Vampire the Masquerade tabletop is very abstract. There's not really the concept of saving cash here. There's no actual money to be had. It's just, this is expensive. Can you afford it? Yes, you can. Very rarely in Rules as Written does your resources ever become affected by anything that you've purchased. The idea that you can afford it is really the only point of that background. However, there are flaws that this affects when it comes to your coterie. Destitute just means poor. It means that you don't have any money. You don't have the ability to buy certain things, to do certain things. Being poor sucks. Take it from experience. Being poor sucks. But with this merit, anybody who's connected to you as a partner, anybody who's in your coterie, now loses that flaw. So there's a few different ways you can do this. The way that I focus in on this is I try to make sure that people have established characters before they get thrown into a coterie situation. Some people might end up building characters to come in as a coterie specifically, and there may be ways to game the system as far as purchasing certain things. And as an ST, it is up to you to care or not care, depending on how your players plan on doing things. The other aspect of this is allowing your coterie members to buy the resources background at 1 less XP. That is actually fairly big, but you could end up walking around with a coterie of high rollers in this game, which I feel like most vampires should have a good handle on their finances pretty early in life. You don't have to eat. Dominate or presence will sway pretty much anything. There are so many reasons why money should not become a factor if you're undead, but that's just my personal opinion. Money dictates. You are the head of the Dunsirn family accounts. You have your undead fingers on the pulse of the Hecata's financial accounts. And you make sure that everyone else knows it. You gain 3 free dots of status in the Hecata. In addition, once per chronicle, you can either give every Hecata in the chronicle 2 additional dots of resources or remove all resource dots from every Hecata in the chronicle. These resource additions, or removals, last for a single story, and if removed, generate a chronicle-length adversary flaw in the form of one of the robbed vampires. This one gives you a lot of stuff. First off, the extra status in the Hecata can be very useful depending on how, as a storyteller, you or as your storyteller, how they tend to run status. I personally tend to run status as in it gives you extra social traits in an interaction with those who that status falls under. In this case, it would be in clan. This only works against other Hecata. In my way of doing things, and again, this is kind of falling in homebrew territory, in my way of doing things, someone can ignore status, but it might look bad on them later and cause consequences. So, it is up to them whether or not they are going to follow your status. The other thing is, you have the ability to give everybody an extra 2 resources in the Hecata for game. You can make your clan exceedingly wealthy. Or you can pull the rug out from under them, be a petty little bitch, and make everybody incredibly poor, taking away all resources for the story. Now, depending on how your storyteller runs that could mean a number of things. A story could just be if there's a certain story arc you're going through, and now your clan has no resources to deal with things because you decided that you were mad at them for some reason. Or if you have some other altruistic reason, who the hell knows? Vampires are petty. But this does give you a chronicle-long adversary, which means you're picking up a vampire enemy who may be out to get you, representing one of the individuals that you robbed for this. I love lore sheets that not only give you fun things, but also give you flaws. This could very well be how you handle a situation in one storyline. But then when the storyteller's ready to run the next storyline, you may have given them the full flavor of what the next chronicle is. This adversary. Play to lose is what I always say. We ball. It's time to roll those dice and take some chances. So we've just gone over the Bankers of Dunsirn lore sheets. The Dunsirn have been a focal point in my games in several editions. Like, the Dunsirn are just, they're just dirty. Like, the idea that they're these big Scottish bankers who have all this money and all this respect, but they're eating people at the same time. It's interesting. I do like the fact that this family reunion has brought a lot of these bloodlines into their own right, while also creating a whole new iteration of the Clan of Death. We've gone from Cappadocian to Giovani to Hecata. And at the time of this filming, 2025, we are approaching 2028. We're just 2.5 years away from it right now, which could lead to some very interesting storylines in World of Darkness, especially now that White Wolf has the reins again. Who knows what they are going to give us as far as the promise of 1528 goes. Is it going to be there? Is it actually, does it actually not have an ending to this? Who knows? But we've got like 2.5 years until we get to find out exactly what's going to happen. In the early 16th century, Spanish Giovanni met representatives of the Aztec civilization as part of the Cortes expedition. In the city of Tenochtitlan, now part of Mexico City, these Giovanni were introduced to a massive, formalized necromantic tradition. So naturally, they killed, enslaved, and converted the heathens, bringing them into the fold. The Giovanni called these converts Pisinab, a Mayan term that roughly translates to ghosts of the dead that walk the earth. The fact that Aztecs weren't Mayan didn't concern the Europeans. That these vampires already had a name, a legacy, and their own beliefs mattered little to the Giovanni. Their leader, Pochli, was still in charge of the Pisinab, up through the family reunion. However, the family had been whittled down to a bare few remaining kindred after the ongoing attacks by the Harbingers of Skulls. Although the reasons for the attacks were unknown, Pochli offered his unlife to the Harbingers in exchange for the end to the hostilities, which the Harbingers accepted. Now, the remaining children of Tenochtitlan are deciding on a new leader while planning their revenge. I would like to start this lore sheet off by saying I probably butchered the name. I probably butcher the name every time I say it. Tenochtitlan. I am not good. I have white tongue, and white tongue makes me sound stupid, but I try. and I try to remain respectful when it comes to these kind of things. But I do want to go over the fact that the Pisanob are an amazing bloodline. They are ritualistics beyond compare. They have a very deep history in the legacies of South America, which there have been some. We've touched on it on earlier videos, but I like the hidden legacies. This whole necromantic civilization that the Giovani just decided, well, it's necromancy, it's ours. That is one of the biggest Giovani flexes that they have, is seeing something and just going, well, it's mine, and they take it. So let's go ahead and take a look at what being a Pisanob with this lore sheet actually does for you. Hiding from the wolf. The remaining Pisanob survive because they are really, really good at hiding. You've learned all manner of techniques to remain out of sight of those that would hunt you, and those you would hunt. You get 1 extra die on any roll to hide, including via the use of disciplines or ceremonies. So the first one gives you a single die in stealth rolls, whether it's mundane or supernatural. You can use Obfuscate if you have decided to invest the points in it, perhaps due to your predator type or some other aspect. And powers such as Cloak of Shadows, which allows you, or the Cloak of Shadows, which allows you to hide within the shadows, also 1 extra die. It's useful, it's simple, and it's not overstretching the number of benefits based on how cheap this part of the lore sheet is. I appreciate that, because there are certain lore sheets that are just like, you spend 1 die, you get 3. You know, it's this one's a little bit more balanced in my opinion. Ghostly instincts. The original kindred embraced in Tenochtitlan were extremely talented necromancers, and they have carried on a wide variety of tips, tricks, and secrets among their brethren. You've learned some of those secrets, which give you 2 additional dice on any Oblivion ceremony roll involving the summoning, control, or destruction of ghosts. This one, in my opinion, is ultimately the Pisanob. They have always been the ritualists, and I like the fact that this one specifically gives you 2 die when it comes to the summoning, control, or destruction of wraiths. This gives them the reason why the Giovani wanted to keep them around. They're better. They're just good at what they do. The traditions, the herbal the herbal additives, you know, like the things like that. It's going to be up to you to come up with the fluff of how this character is going to work. What is their secret that gives them 2 extra dice? 2 dice can be a lot. That's a crit. 2 dice that roll up on 10. That's 4 successes. That is useful. That is useful as all hell when it comes to lore sheets. Forward thinking. After years of being hunted down by the Harbingers of Skulls, you've learned to always plan ahead, turning potential tragedy into a triumph. Once per story, you can re-roll on any skill roll. In addition, you always get 1 free skill re-roll in any scene in which you work against another Hecata. If the Hecata in question is a member of the Harbingers of Skulls, you get an additional success on that reroll. Forward thinking is kind of petty, and I love it. The idea that you, once per story, get that bonus. That's helpful. But the fact that you get that bonus every single time you work against another Hecata, because there's still hard failings. The family reunion doesn't mean that everybody's forgotten and everything. It means that everybody's decided to put their problems to the side for now, while survival is the main reason why they're together. Some of these individual kindred may be accepting the reunion simply to get closer to enemies, to find a better way to shove that knife in the back. This one represents that very well with the Harbingers of Skulls, where you get even more benefits. I don't know if you're playing like just a full Hecata game and you want to take this, because I've done that and it was probably one of the best storylines I've ever run. 13 sessions of nothing but havoc. It was amazing. You should check out Black Sheep if you haven't already. Necromantic Prodigy. The secrets of Oblivion are yours to command, whether through study, your ancient bloodline, or secrets you have acquired from your cousins over the years. Your mastery of necromantic ceremonies is unparalleled. You get 2 automatic successes on any roll necessary for activating a necromantic oblivion ceremony. So not 2 extra dice, 2 extra successes. Which means that you never can outright fail. You are so damn good at what you do that you will never outright fail. You might not hit what you need, so the ritual might not work, but you can never fail so bad that something horrible happens. And with necromancy, I would say that's important. Next in line. Now that Pochli has sacrificed himself to the Hecata's grand plan of unity, it is time for another to step up and lead the Pisanob to future glory. You are one such individual, wielding a balance of necromantic skill and political savvy. You have an additional 2 dots of status within the Hecata. Further, you have an ally among the Hecata leadership, who acts as a 5-dot mala once every other story. You can purchase the mala background, as normal, to make the character a more regular mentor or patron. So, next in line. I've noticed this among a few of the Hecata lore sheets, which we'll get through in time, but there were several deaths within the family reunion that brought these individuals together. You could very well be the new Pochli. There is somebody else who could very well be the new Baron for the Nation of Blood. Having the extra status among the group, same as what I had said with the Dunsirn before, the way that I use status is I tend to make it extra social traits that can be used, when interacting with somebody who has reason to bow to that status. In this case, clan on clan. They can choose to ignore it if they choose to. And again, this is my way of interpreting. This is my house rule kind of situation. They can choose to ignore it, but it will make them look bad in other interactions with members of the family. The big thing here that we're looking at, though, is a 5-dot mala of an elder who's probably of the Anziani or the 1444 Council. This is where you get into some very big lore. You have somebody who is strong and powerful and politically savvy, who is on your side and is willing to do what they need to get you to be where they want you, effectively. Now, this is a 5-dot mala that you can also spend points in to make it so that it's not an interaction every other story. That this is an interaction that you could have on a more regular basis as a mentor or a patron. I am a huge fan of this lore sheet altogether, and this one really just sets it in stone for me with how much revenge the Pisanob actually might want against the Harbingers of Skulls. This really is a very fun social interaction that you can have with multiple bloodlines. So, the children of Tenochtitlan. Obviously, a Hecata-only lore sheet, if I didn't say that before. This lore sheet does put you in a cultural box, which most of these lore sheet bloodlines are going to, because each of these bloodlines has their own cultural setting. But it really does add a lot of drama, and it's a lot of fun to see those characters interact. But yeah, so with that being said, I'm interested in knowing what your thoughts on this bloodline are. If you can put that in the comments, I would sincerely enjoy that, because they came out of what will eventually be known as Mexico City, which has a very interesting sordid past in the world of darkness. We're talking infernalists and Sabbat and just like all these dark things. And now the Camarilla holds sway over Mexico City. Does this affect anything about the Pisonobs now? The Nagaraja are the most wayward of vampires in a clan now full of wayward vampires. They believe themselves to be the first ever necromancers. They revel in the fact that their lineage is not easy to trace back to one of the known antediluvians. They believe they once mastered the lands of the dead, having converted their blood to live in such a place. And perhaps as a result of the said ceremony, they ate human flesh in lieu of drinking blood. They believe one night they can become masters of the underworld again. The Nagaraja are rightly seen as boogeymen, as they number but few and advocate for the honorable practice of capturing mortals and stripping them of their flesh and blood night after night, while keeping them alive through first aid and gifts of vitae. As a desperate group, they have little that binds them as a society beyond their affinity for ghosts. Most master oblivion ahead of any other discipline, and their belief that torment of the body and spirit brings any witnesses or victims closer to the mysteries of life, death, and undeath. A handful of Nagaraja showed up at the family reunion, claiming some kind of catastrophe drove them out of their homes. Initially, they were believed to be some kind of radical form of Dunsirn, but while the bankers are hobbyists in the realm of cannibalism, the Nagaraja are experts. Years of avoiding attention from both mortals and kindred society have honed them into efficient serial killers, quite useful to their new clanmates. They may no longer need flesh in the way they did, but their skills are still useful in this new age. And some, well, they never lost the taste. The Flesh Eaters. That's what we're covering tonight. Greetings, kindred. I am Voivode Maquette, and welcome back to our World of Darkness, where we're going through the lore sheets found in the Player's Guide. Now, these are also the lore sheets, some of them errata, some of them straightforward, from Cult of the Blood Gods. So there's a very good chance that we won't be covering these again in that playlist. But I do want to go over the fact that we're talking the Nagaraja here. We're talking a clan that, for all intents and purposes, should not exist. This bloodline is from the Black Hand. Not the Sabbat, mind you, but an organization with so many ups and downs, backs and forths, in their said existence that many people just do not admit the fact that it ever existed. We are talking about the same group that not only held a host of regular kindred and anti-tribute, but also the true Bruja and the old clan Tzimisce, both of which don't have any representation in this new edition. Now, utilizing character creation and the fact that amalgams exist, you could argue that old clan Tzimisce are just Tzimisce who have decided not to take any type of path towards vicissitude or the flesh-crafting arts. But what about the true Bruja? Did they exist? Did they die in the fall of the Shadow City of Enoch? There are so many ridiculous stories that we could actually go into, some of which I find highly entertaining. But the Nagaraja are in the center of it. They are a group of mages that brought themselves into the world of the kindred, very similar to the way that the Tremere did. And now they're trying to weasel their way into the Hecata. They are not Hecata by blood. However, family doesn't necessarily just mean blood. It can mean those that you adopt. It can be those that you find cherished, somebody that you need. And that is where we find the Nagaraja, these strange Shadowland necromancers that are just finding their way into this place. So, let's take a look at what these non-Hecata get through their lore sheet. Viscous. You can still eat flesh in lieu of drinking blood. Biting a mortal and causing an aggravated wound acts in all other ways like drinking blood for you. You can also eat fresh corpses, although the taste is not as good. Is this a benefit? I mean, being able to eat fresh corpses instead, it also says can, it doesn't say have to. So this does give you a little bit more of an edge towards openness on what you can feed from, but it is very interesting. This is the first lore sheet I've ever seen that actually makes me question, is this a benefit? Being able to eat flesh, I don't know whether or not I should count that as something that's good or bad, but it does give you options. Unseen spirit. Some of the Nagaraja can make themselves unseen to ghosts and spirits. If you do not already have access to the Offuscate discipline, take Cloak of Shadows at no cost. You do not necessarily have the Offuscate discipline, but rather a special power of your own. This power works like Cloak of Shadows, except that it only works against spirits and ghosts. If you do have, or later acquire, Offuscate, instead, all your Offuscate powers work against ghosts and spirits, in addition to their usual effects. This one's kind of neat. So, you buy a 2-point in a lore sheet, and you get Cloak of Shadows Offuscate, which is an out-of-clan discipline for you, for free, but it only works against wraiths. That's very, very interesting. The idea that you have the ability to stay hidden from those who would typically be the hidden. And if you buy into Offuscate later, all of your Offuscate works against wraiths. That's just fun. I like the additive, and I like the fact that it specifically says that it's not really Offuscate, it's a special thing that you've acquired because of what you can do. I appreciate that very much. The perfect murder. You have a lot of experience in planning murders. As long as you have at least a night to plan a cold-blooded, intentional murder, you get 1 extra success on all rolls for that murder scene. These successes are negated by someone who possesses the Send a Murderer bloodline ability. So, this one's neat. You get an extra point in all things crime scene if you've committed a murder in here. And it's an extra success, mind you, not an extra die. I like the fact that it just means that you're better. Not that you have a chance to be better, you're better. I also think it's interesting that the only thing that negates this is the next level of the same lore sheet. So, game recognizes game is what I'm catching from this. A Nagaraja is going to be able to go, another Nagaraja was here, which is interesting with such a small bloodline. But in a larger game, I can see where this might take front and center. It's like my game that I run, Thicker Than Water, has no limit on players. The limit on players is basically all set on time and when things can be brought in, when people have the ability to play. I mean, I run games almost every day. Hell, in about 2 hours, I got a game that I got to run. But not all games are like this. So a game that has 4 to 6 players, maybe, and has multiple Nagaraja who might be working against each other is kind of an interesting concept. I'm interested in scenarios. All you storytellers out there, all you players out there who have great ideas and aspire to be storytellers, in the comments below, I would like you to give me a scenario where you think this might come into play in a PvP situation. Send a murderer. You're a serial killer. Or maybe you've spent a lot of time studying them. You get 2 extra dice on rolls to study murder scenes or track down killers. In addition, you've worked with law officials, mortal, kindred, or both, on some cases, whether it's through sending them anonymous emails or as a direct consultant. You have 3 dots to spend between contacts with the police force, contacts with investigators in kindred society, and status. Send a Murderer is interesting. First off, I like the fact that it does negate the effects of the previous part of this lore sheet. But Send a Killer kind of gives you a Dexter vibe. You've worked with officials, both mortal and kindred. You've studied up on serial killers. You know what you're looking for. You get status for it. Like, this does give you a good variety of ways of utilizing this. And also, I've never really considered taking contacts of investigative kindred. I've always looked at contacts as simply a mortal thing. But maybe the kindred are utilizing ghouls in their investigations. You've got to get stuff done during the day. There are a few ways you could handle this, and it's thought-provoking. It's very thought-provoking. Monstrous bites. When ready to attack or feed, your teeth extend to lengthy, splayed, and vicious daggers that protrude from your mouth. When attacking with your bite, you suffer no called shot penalty. Gain 1 extra success on all intimidation rolls, and increase your bite damage to 3. First off, ow. A bite is 2 aggravated damage, which means a bite from a Nagaraja with this lore sheet is 3. The Nagaraja have always been said to have like rows of like vicious, nasty biting it, but this is mechanical. I like that. I like the fact that it's there. It does make sense that it would increase your intimidation. The thing that calls my attention is the fact that a called shot is needed for a bite. I think that might be something that I, as an ST, overlooked while running games. And now my players are probably going to be pretty pissed. Now, I think that I would probably utilize this only if you haven't already grappled. Like, I believe that that is the intention, is like, you can bite in 2 rounds, first round being grapple, second being sink your teeth in, or you can bite in 1 round, which takes a called shot. I'm going to have to do a little bit of research, but I'm pretty sure that's the way it's going to go from now on. Anyway, I enjoy the idea of all of this. The thoughts of Pennywise opening his mouth and just latching on kind of thing is really what sticks into my head when I read that kind of thing. So, yeah. Nagaraja are just fun. I am actually very curious what the thought process is for the people who are developing these books when it comes to including a bloodline like the Nagaraja. The Nagaraja are a member of the True Black Hand, which is a faction that debatably never existed. Depending on how you want to look at it, the Dirty Secrets of the Black Hand book was something that brought in almost a interdimensional aspect to Vampire the Masquerade, with alien viruses and kidnapping revenants and antediluvians being worshipped underneath the soil of a ghost city that's under siege by mages and wraiths and spirit storms, and just like so much. I prefer my games to be smaller and in-depth and focus on the personal stories of the characters. You include something like this, and it's just like, here's some crazy off-the-wall stuff that I never intended to put into my games. Holding the Jihad's longest grudge. The Cappadocians were the clan of death before they were usurped by the upstart Giovani. Believed for centuries to be destroyed, the Cappadocians either took to wearing masks and calling themselves the Harbingers of Skulls, or a sub-faction of the clan named themselves Harbingers, generations before. Whatever the truth, the majority joined the Sabbat and worked aggressively against Giovanni interests. For many years, it was thought that both sides would never stop until one obliterated the other. But that appears to have changed with the family reunion. Despite the reconciliation and the acknowledgement of the remnants of the Cappadocian kindred, the Harbingers of Skulls, as they were, could no longer exist. But neither could the Cappadocians return to their former state after so many centuries of anger. As such, these kindred respond to either name, but they have become some synthesis of the two. Like all things, the past form has died and enriched the earth so that something new can grow. Greetings, kindred. I am Voivode Maquette, and welcome back to our World of Darkness, where we are just powering through the Loresheets in the Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition Player's Guide. When I say Loresheet, however, I currently am working on the bloodlines, which don't really fall under the same conditions. These are only for Hecata, and they're handling some pretty intense storylines. Specifically, right now, we're talking about the Harbingers of Ash. This is a mix of the Harbingers of Skulls and the Cappadocians, who were the children of Ashur. Now they are both. So there's lots of different stories. These could be very well the ancient kindred who were locked in Kamakalai and found out how to survive. These could be surviving aspects of the Cappadocians that found their way into the Sabbat to help. There is a strict storyline on how this goes if you follow specific aspects of the canon. I do not believe that the Harbingers of Skulls joined the Sabbat until the late 90s, early 2000s, around that time. Around the time that things started to really hit the fan as the Week of Nightmares and all that stuff was just up in the air. These kindred are the mortal enemies of the Pisanov. They also spent so long fighting against the Giovani. But now they're sitting at the same table. Now they're trying to show their worth to the newly formed Hecata. I'm a big fan of the Harbingers of Skulls, and where they are coming from now as the Harbingers of Asher is pretty interesting to look into. The Ashen Mask. You don a plain mask made of ash wood. For while you respect the traditions of the Harbingers, you care more about studying death than status, glory, or revenge. If a touchstone of yours is dead or dies after you purchase this lore, study of their corpse allows you to transfer the conviction they represent to another mortal, as if they died peacefully. If they actually did, gain 1 die bonus to the humanity test. If anybody else interferes with the corpse, you must test against Fury Frenzy at a difficulty of 3. This one's neat. I like lore sheets that interact with touchstones. So basically what this one's saying is, if a touchstone passes away naturally, peacefully, you do have the ability to go, well, look at this person, they remind me a lot of that. But if something violent happens to a touchstone, you tend to lose your conviction. It's sad, it's true, and it's necessary for this game to play like this, but this sidesteps this. If you have the ability to basically study the corpse of your dead touchstone, you can act as if they died peacefully. You get more closure than most kindred do. The fact that if they do die peacefully, you get even more benefit is incredible, and I like the way that it's done. More lore sheets for touchstones need to be out there, in my opinion. The Gold Mask. You don a rose gold mask because you strive to balance your existence between the living and the dead. Gold has connections to both wealth and alchemy, with golden grave goods sitting in the perfect intersection between the two. As such, you have the capacity to hide your actions and the actions of your coterie as you explore death. You have the equivalent of 4 dots of influence when attempting to cover up a death. This one's interesting because it implies a secret society. Now hear me out. I might just be jumping to conclusions on this one. You have a mask that you can wear that's rose gold, but it gives you influence to cover up a crime scene effectively, cover up a death. That tells me that there is like a secret society of coroners, or even people who work in like maybe crime scene investigation or police, that are willing to turn the other cheek on things, to just not pay attention to what's going on a crime scene if they see you. Tell me that doesn't sound like a secret organization. I personally think it does. What are your thoughts? Comment, please. The White Mask. You don a bone white mask with not a speck of dirt on it, because it is the mask of a respected harbinger, lost in one of the historic purges. You speak for the elders of your bloodline, and most harbingers, and even other Hecata, listen to you. You add 3 dice to any social rolls against another harbinger, and 2 dice in any social rolls against another Hecata. This one's pretty interesting. This touches on the culture of the Harbingers of Skulls, the Sabbat faction of Cappadocians, necromancers that are feared. This lore sheet basically says that you have the mask of a dead harbinger who was lost in one of the purges. I'm not trying to basically just say what I already said. But it's such a recognized mask that people listen to you for having it. Did you inherit it? Did you kill the individual who you took it from? Was it gifted to you? Regardless, other Harbingers of Usher respect it and will give you their attention. Other Hecata know that the Harbingers are just terrifying and therefore also respect it. Not as much, but a little. It doesn't give you status, it gives you social acumen. Interesting lore sheet. The Obsidian Mask. You don a polished black mask. Because you are more than just a vampire. You are truly half dead. You are a wraith that has inhabited a vampire's body. You may learn Oblivion ceremonies without a teacher. And with half the training time, if you have one anyway, due to your experience in the underworld, but are vulnerable to effects which target ghosts, such as some Oblivion ceremonies. You suffer a 2 dice penalty to resist these effects, but gain a 2 dice bonus when resisting effects that control your physical shell, such as Dominate. This one's neat. And I feel that if anybody's going to take this one, it needs to be at character creation. Personally. I understand this is the 4th level of a mask, or of a lore sheet, and typically you don't have to buy them in any specific order, but if you're planning on playing a character that is a wraith in a vampire's body, that needs to be something that's out there, unless you're doing some kind of like psychological amnesia. You don't remember that you're a wraith thing, and then like the memories come back. I don't know. I guess there are ways of working around this, but this is a very, very interesting one. I like the fact that you're weak against Oblivion ceremonies targeted towards wraiths, because in all technicality you are a wraith. But you also gain a bonus against powers like Dominate. Anything that like controls your shell. Not presence. That controls your emotions. I want to point that out. There is a difference. The Lazarine Mask. You don the mask, engraved in the image of one of the clan founders. For you, know the true secret of the Harbingers. Their crusade was never solely about destroying the Giovani, but annihilating those who serve the clan of death. The final stage of necromancy is for all who practice it to die and become the masters of death. You incur no stain for any action taken in the pursuit of killing another Hecata kindred or any character who serves the Hecata. The Lazarine Mask is horrifying because it basically marks you as an antagonist of your own clan. You can be a very slow, methodical, villainous character who goes in and kills off members of your own clan and their assistants, or you can go in and just hack and slash. But either way, you do not receive the stains for betrayal. You have a goal. You are going to see it out. And it's not about murder. It's about reaching the final step to necromantic practice, which is in fact no longer existing on the physical plane. It says you're killing them to become the masters of death. So perhaps sending them with all of their accumulated knowledge to the Shadowlands in that form gives them a better chance of becoming something akin to like a Death Lord or something like that. Who knows? Only you, who has this point of the lore sheet, know the true secrets of the Harbingers. Anyway, I found this one interesting because it is a series of masks. And aside from the 4th one, the Obsidian Mask, where, again, to me, it just feels like you should have to take that one at character creation. I guess if you're willing to say that a wraith inhabited your character and now you're a wraith taking over that, yeah, there are reasons to let things happen in a different way. But due to the fact that characters are encouraged to buy up in Loresheets, you just keep collecting masks and you wear them for different situations. It's a very interesting thing. The idea of the death mask, the visage of the dead, is it's a very interesting concept, and it's something that I'm going to end up mulling over for a very long time. Anyway, so until recently, whenever an outsider kindred thought about the Clan of Death, they pictured the Giovani family. Their origin stretched back before the Roman Empire, when they were known as the Giovians. And the entire time, they've had their hands in kindred affairs. The original Giovani family knew how to play the game better than anyone, crafting an identity as devil kindred to strike the right balance of fear and respect in their rivals and their relatives. Identifying the Giovani family with the Clan of Death was a useful fiction for centuries, until the Vatican and the FBI joined forces against the clan, starting with the family. Reputation comes with records, and the Second Inquisition rolled up every family retainer and bank account they could find. When the family reunion restructured the Clan of Death, the surviving Giovani found safety in this new anonymity. But they resented having to hide themselves, and further resented upstart bloodlines tossing out their family history for security, or worse, for political convenience. The true Giovani have grown used to being top dogs, and they'll murder to retain that position. After all, no one fights like family. Greetings, kindred. Welcome to our world of darkness. I am Voivode Maquette, and today we're talking about the top dogs of the Clan of Death. About a decade ago, we're talking about Clan Giovani. The lore sheet, La Familia Giovani, focuses on the vampires who have been in charge of the Clan of Death for 500 years, taking on minor families under their wings for development of their own power, structure, and wealth. The Giovani may very well be the one clan that can outdo Ventru in money, outdo Zemitzi or La Sombra in creepiness. There are many rumors, which we're not going to bring up. If you want to know about the depths of depravity that the Giovani have gone through, please go ahead and write down that you're interested in family history, and I will go ahead and do that. So down in the comments, if you want to see it, let me know, and I'll do a video focusing primarily on the Giovani's history in depravity, wealth, and kindred power. But that's not what we're here for today. Today, we're here looking at the lore sheet that's found in the Player's Guide, which is for Hekata characters only. You are a Giovani, and this is what you get. A cousin's ear. Even if family members hate each other, the whole family lives by a certain code to share information. That's how they've survived everything, from the fall of the Roman Empire to the Second Inquisition. Once per session, you can ask a direct question of another member of the Giovani family and get a straight answer. However, you have to answer a question in return. You can also ask a favor of mortal members of the family once per story, as if you had the allies' background at 3 dots. A cousin's ear gives you a quid pro quo. Basically, you will get a straight out answer if you answer a question to them first. So If you have a player with this and you're a storyteller, it might be a good idea to try to think of questions ahead of time, because being caught off guard sucks. I do like the fact that you also effectively, once per story, get like a 3-dot ally as a Giovani who will basically do things for you. Now, it does not say anything about them having like retainer issues where they're like just morally incomprehensible, but the idea that these people will do things for you, they will do favors for you, and they can work during the day is very, very useful. Faded glamour. Being a Giovani still means something, even if it's not your name or the clan name anymore. Old habits die hard. And the instinct to obey is still ingrained in much of the Clan of Death. Once per session, you can add 1 automatic success to any social roll against another Hecata kindred, ghoul, or retainer. Starting off strong here with the second one. Not an extra die, an extra success. That means an automatic success. The difficulty of a success basically ranks how well you're doing in something, but a total failure, a bestial failure, can lead to some very, very unfortunate reactions with family. This takes that off the table. This lets you hold some modicum of respect, no matter how horrible you roll. Respect is everything in the Giovani. Petty cash. The Giovani started as merchants, and they still know the power of cold, hard cash. As one of the favored childer of your family, you have access to a substantial bank account. You get 4 dots to spend among the resources and retainers' backgrounds for free. But these dots can be pulled back by elder members of the family at any time, especially if you cross them. I like the concept of petty cash. The idea that the family, the Giovani, have pooled resources is something that I've always thought. I've never considered spending points and resources in a Giovani character in the past, no matter what edition. I've always gone up to my storyteller and said that I was requesting something from an elder. Like, I'll take Mentor, or currently Mala, over resources any day of the week. I also like the idea that instead of resources, you could also take things in retainers, meaning that you have Giovani ghouls that will do things for you. That is very, very, very useful. Now, I started playing Vampire the Masquerade in LARP, Mind's Eye Theater, Laws of the Night, 2nd edition revised. The Giovani in that were allowed to take retainers as spirits. They were allowed to have wraith retainers, which I always thought was cool. There's a couple of vampire clans that basically gave you specialized retainers, and it was just, I don't know, that always just added some really fine fluff, in my opinion. Not really sure on the access to wraith retainers in this system, but if they're not there, I might end up having to house rule that into thicker than water. Spectre Servant. There's a lot the family is good at, but in particular, they're excellent at enslaving the spirits of the dead to their will. You have inherited or personally captured a spectre to act as your servant. This ally uses the Spectre stats that are found in the Vampire the Masquerade core book on page 377. The Spectre wants nothing more than to break the leash and devour your spirits. Until then, they can be summoned once per session and arrive within 10 hours. I think it's funny that that popped up right after I was talking about Wraith Retainers in the old edition. So, I do want to point out that a Spectre and a Wraith are 2 different things, kinda. Think of a Spectre as the beast of a vampire. When a Wraith goes through all the hell that is Wraith existence, and they get worn down to the point where they've lost all memory of themselves, they're nothing but an angry ventral spirit. That is a Spectre. So you have an angry, I want to kill everything wraith that serves you because it has to. This isn't exactly the same thing as I was talking about as a wraith retainer, but it's kind of interesting, the idea that it only mentions that. It doesn't say anything about a wraith retainer, it only mentions a spectral retainer, which kind of tells me that the service of a Giovani will over time erode a wraith's ability to keep themselves sane. This is a fun one that I would definitely take advantage of, make an angry thing that would eventually try to break whatever hold a character had on it, and this is now the new big bad. There's lots of uses for a spectral retainer, though, in my opinion. Aspiring Anziona. You have managed to work your way through the hidden politics of the family reunion and come out on top. You've done so partially for political skill and ruthless zeal, but mostly because you know where the bodies are buried, in every sense. You gain 5 dots of status among the Hecata, and you get a private audience with the Capuchin every few stories. Just don't push your luck, or you'll join the corpses. So, this is another one of those leadership roles. You have found a way to be one of the top dog Giovani. An Anzione, as they are called. Respected elder is what that actually translates to. 5 dots of status among the Hecata, in my opinion, runs this way. You get 5 extra traits to throw in social challenges. They can choose to ignore it. That'll get them in trouble with the equivalent of the status that you have. Again, house rule. I've said this with a few of them when it comes to status involving in Loresheets. The idea that every few stories you can get an audience with the Capuchin. For those of you who do not know, the Capuchin is effectively the mysterious figure of the Hecata who started the family reunion. There's a lot of back and forth on who this person's identity might be. He could be Japheth of the Cappadocius if he survived the attack on him over 500 years ago. He could be Lazarus. He could be the Baron. There's so many ideas of who the Capuchin could be. There are lots of theories out there, and I'm not exactly sure what the canon is because I've read so many things. I don't even think they've really announced it yet, which is fun. There's a lot to say for having the unknown. Pissing him off, on the other hand, is a bad idea. I would like to point out Exhibit A, Uncle Augie, who is no longer with us. Augustus Giovanni used to be the leader of Clan Giovanni. Where is he now? Nobody knows. There's lots of evidence to suggest that he may have been killed by possibly the Baron of the Zameti bloodline or the Nation of Blood, the Nasan Sanan, or possibly even by the Capuchin himself. Don't mess with the elders, especially ones who have strange gifts that outweigh anything you possibly have. Anyway, so La Familia Giovani. I love the Giovanni. They are probably one of my favorite clans. I talk about the Tzimisce a lot. I understand that. My name is all about the Tzimisce. Voivode is a title of a high-ranking Tzimisce. Maquette is one of the suspected names of the Tzimisce Antediluvian, which is why I chose Voivode Maquette. I really do love the Gangrel very, very much. I find them as like a bestial version of the Tzimisce, or I find the Tzimisce as a sophisticated version of Gangrel. And now that they have Protean, it kind of just backs up my thoughts on that one. But I absolutely love the Clan of Death. One of my favorite NPCs, Sunny Black, is a Putinesca. The Giovanni family storyline through the Giovanni Chronicles is probably one of my favorite parts of the old World of Darkness regime. But, like, the Cappadocians are amazing. The Giovani are awesome. The Hecata is just what this system needed. The Lamia were a bloodline of kindred believed to be descended from Lilith, as well as Cain. Their founder and high priestess, named Lamia, claimed to be the daughter of the Dark Mother herself. In ancient times, the Cappadocian elders found Lamia performing sacred Bahari rites, and was so taken by her skin and resistance to pain that he embraced her. From then on, the Lamia were dedicated warriors protecting the Cappadocian clan, until the clan's alleged destruction by the Giovani. The last Lamia was believed destroyed in 1718. However, the Gorgons lived on, much like their Cappadocian charges. While the latter claimed the title Harbingers of Skulls, the Lamia took the title of Lilins, spreading the word of Lilith and the Bahari faith, while secretly uncovering the fate of the Cappadocians and undermining the Giovani. Now, in the wake of the family reunion, these women stand proudly, once again, at the side of the kindred that embraced them. Although they are less inclined to tolerate the so-called Cainites who chastise their faith. So we are currently covering the Gorgons, the Lamia of the Hecata. Greetings, kindred. I am Voivode Maquette. This is our World of Darkness, and we are going through the Loresheets found in the Player's Guide. I don't know why I was getting all dramatic on that one. The Lamia are fun. They are amazing. They come from a story of trauma and stress, and they speak of power and moving on. And seriously, they are feminism the clan. I actually very, very much love these characters. I think they're amazing. They are not solely female. However, they do tend to have more female members due to the fact that they do have a feminist stance as far as the worship of Lilith as a Bahari. They can be very suspicious of men. That being said, their creation was a non-consenting act of violence. If you read up on the amazing story of the Lamia and how they were brought into existence into the world of darkness, it does start off with a very harrowing experience with someone who believes they are, or perhaps they even are, the daughter of Lilith herself. Given Lilith's history, it's really sad that the immortal powers of the kindred came to them in such a fashion. But let's go ahead and take a look what the Lamia have to offer in their lore sheet. The Serpent's Kiss. Legend claims the bite of the Lamia once spread plague to their victims. These nights, the bite of the Lamia is no longer fatal, although a few, like yourself, have some remnants of the disease left in their system. Once per story, you can choose to infect your mortal prey with disease, causing them 1 aggravated damage every night for 3 nights. This ability has no effect on vampires. So that is one of the things that the Lamia are known for, is the fact that they spread plague in their bite. It could be seen as the bubonic plague. It could be seen as something wholly supernatural that just resembles that kind of disease. But the fact that it deals an aggravated damage per night for 3 nights is horrific, considering the fact that this is used against mortals. Mortals don't tend to survive aggravated damages very well, especially when they're internal like that. This is one of the things where somebody would have to be at the hospital to survive, in my opinion. I do believe that this is a death sentence, and I don't think most people would survive the first night, let alone all three. Protection. You embody the original purpose of the Lamia, the protection of your charges, by any means necessary. You gain a 2-die bonus when using the block maneuver to protect someone else. 2 dice bonus for using the block maneuver. This stops someone else from getting hit. This is so ingrained in the Lamia's psyche that it's kind of like second nature to them to just act like bodyguards, and I like the fact that it is represented in their lore sheet. Taking on a role of bodyguard for another character. This opens a wide variety in terms of possible fetch missions, or even just making sure that a member of the Hecata stays protected because you've taken them on as your charge. 4 humors. Many ancient Lamia practiced manipulation of the 4 humors, allowing control over their victim's body or mind. Once per story, you may bite a mortal and inflict a 2-dice penalty on all actions which don't immediately further their current resonance until the end of the night, or their resonance changes humors. If their blood contains a dyscrasia, increase this penalty to 3 dice. 4 humors is an interesting way of putting this due to the fact that in the older editions of the Dark Age version of Vampire, the Lamia had the ability to basically manipulate the 4 humors, which was the Dark Age understanding of medical needs. Basically blood, yellow bile, black bile, and phlegm. Sounds delicious. But the idea is that it affects the resonance. This is something that could be utilized if you were infecting a feeding pool of another kindred. I just get a whole bunch of dirty ideas for this one. I love the concept of this person is messing with somebody else's herd. Fun. Controlling the beast. Chaos and pain are key aspects to the Bahari faith, and thus the faith of many Lamia. However, mindless chaos and pain do not lead to education, so controlling accidental infliction of both is important. Once per session, you can convert a messy critical in combat into a critical. Very useful. I'm just gonna this is a very plain, no need to elaborate thing. If you get a messy critical, you succeed in your action, but something bad happens in coordinates. In my thought, it is something equivalent to an aggravated damage. Whether or not that is physical, social, mental, political, it doesn't matter. But the beast taking over does not happen very often when it comes to the Lamia due to their Bahari practices. So, due to possibly breath control, blood circulation, or some other possible power, possibly self-flagellation, actually. That sounds very Bahari. Self-harm, basically. You can reduce a messy critical to just a standard critical, getting what you need to happen. It's definitely a tender subject, and I can see how some people might need to make this a veil for their games, but it's also something that I see as very fitting in the World of Darkness setting. Medusa's Gaze. The Lamia most steeped in the bloodline's mysteries hold a private power that portrays a more literal meaning behind their epitaph than many realize. Once per session, after you win an intimidation or conflict roll, those who lost become unable to act on the following conflict turn. Outside of combat, they become unable to move for a scene unless they succeed at a willpower roll difficulty of 5. Medusa's gaze effectively gives you another power that does not literally turn anyone to stone, but it does give them paralysis. They're unable to move unless they pass a willpower test of 5. In a combat situation or a conflict, whether or not you're in a heated argument where dice are being rolled, or in a physical combat, you can freeze them for a turn, which is useful. I think it's a very interesting power. It does kind of give them a little bit more connection to their Gorgon name. I'm a huge fan. I like the idea of I can turn you to stone. It doesn't actually turn you to stone, but it does, in fact, paralyze you. So, the Lamia have come a long way from being just simple bodyguards. They're now a bloodline that may fall into the same old routine, but do tend to have a mind of their own now. This is a very interesting way of looking at things. What is the ulterior motives of the clan that literally is the Bahari? You can take a Bahari character from pretty much any clan you want, but these are the ones who started it. Founded by Lamia herself, who is a daughter of Lilith. They worship Lilith. A young lineage with black Atlantic roots and rumored Cappadocian connections, the vampires, once known as the Zameti, carried on business as mercenaries, spies, and necromancers, maintaining herds and confidants in religious circles and keeping a low profile. Rumor and misconceptions shrouded them in secrecy, but at the family reunion they emerged from the lies to enter into the clan of death. Unanswered questions still abound, many focused on their infamous paterfamilias, known in modern nights as Doc Sands. But times have changed. Voodoo isn't hiding anymore, and neither are they. Nasan Sanan are stepping out in billowing dresses, immaculately coordinated streetwear, and even the occasional silk hat. Greetings, kindred. I am Voivode Maquette. Welcome back to our World of Darkness, and we are going through the Loresheets found in the Player's Guide for Vampire the Masquerade 5th Edition. Today, specifically, we're going over the bloodline known as the Nasan Sanan, or the Nation of Blood, or as they were known in earlier times as the Zameti. They are named for Baron Zameti. They are not claiming that Doc San is the Baron himself, which is a Loa, which is a religious figure. I like the fact that they've done a very good job giving respect to the culture while still keeping the bloodline. I like them. I mean, that's basically it. I always thought that they were more respected or respectable than they were portrayed. I like the idea of the zombie-esque vampires. They are the Cappadocians who really just kind of lost control of like their forms as time went by. There is like another sentence or so to that lore sheet that has so many words in it that I can't even begin to pronounce, that I didn't try. So, yes, there was more on there. I did not read it. I'm being upfront about that. But the Zameti are interesting because, as it says, that they were hired as spies. They were hired as mercenaries and as assassins. And they always had this like massive issue between them and the Giovani. But there was always like, are they the Cappadocians? Like, where did they come from? What is happening here? They are a Caribbean brought on bloodline. Let's look at what they have to offer and see how much of the old Zameti remains in the Nasan Sanan. CIA shit. As an aspiring Jeed, you've learned a few tricks about death. One of them is knowing a lot about rot, decay, and how bodies die. By carefully examining a mortal corpse, you can immediately know the cause of death. If the cause of death is supernaturally concealed, you gain the ability to roll despite that. So this one is very interesting. It gives the ability to basically see how things died, what happened, investigate a crime scene. It gives you crime scene investigation abilities. Even if things are supernaturally concealed, you still get to roll. I also tend to laugh every time I say CSI shit. I think it's funny that it's just so blatantly blah, this is what it is. It's a fun lore sheet. I like this one. Pound of flesh. Something of your bloodline's original weakness remains with you, even as a full-fledged Hecata. In fact, you can even share it around. If you accept a gift freely given, you and whoever gave it to you receives a 3 dice penalty from any pool used for any action against one another for the remainder of the night. Pound of flesh effectively represents the concept of a crossroad deal. You have made an agreement with this person. Therefore, you cannot hurt them and they cannot hurt you. This is represented by a 3 dice penalty towards both individuals. This is a great way to make sure that things don't blow back, that you are going to do an honorable deal. And I like the fact that this is included. I like the fact that it's a social interaction and not just some kind of physical thing. This takes cooperation. It's a lot of fun. Treat yourself. You've taken the Guide's legendary appetite to heart. Once a night, you can indulge in a meal, a cigar, an alcoholic drink, or a sexual tryst, just as a human would, regardless of any penalties which humanity might inflict, and incurring no negative effects in terms of hunger. Your consumption thereof appears convincingly human to anyone paying attention to that kind of thing. Once a night, you can eat, drink, smoke, have sex without any kind of vampiric penalty. There is something about the relationship between wraiths and the Nasan Sanan that really does make this clan amazing. You get to actually enjoy the things, almost as if you're accepting an offering, the way that Loa spirits would. I do like the fact that this is in here, and the fact that it lets you just convincingly be human for a bloodline that was so convincingly not human for so long. It's a great turnaround, and I feel like the clan itself is probably enjoying it more than anything. My Setite friend. Your bloodline has a strange relationship with the ministry. There's a lot of overlap in interest, and more than a few have decided to join the ministry rather than stay with the Hecata. You have a connection with the ministry, whether it's one of those wayward Zemeti or another follower of Set. You can ask your friend for a favor once per story, which translates to the equivalent of a 3-dot in appropriate background, such as an ally, influence, or resources. So you know a member of the ministry, be they a other Zemeti or a legit follower of Set ministry member. You gain benefits, resources, influence, allies, things like that through them. You have access to a Setite cult, is basically what this is. I like the fact that it shows the relationship between these two groups. I always found the Zemeti having a friendly relationship with the Serpents of the Light, which are the Sabbat ministry. they have similar cultural connections. So the fact that this carries over because of common interest and things like that makes a lot of sense. And I like the fact that it also encourages you to make the ministry not just a clan, but an organization in and of itself. The ministry adopt all clans. The Hecata may be part of that, especially if you were once a Zemeti. The Silk Hat. No one is entirely sure who the Bloody Doctor is, but they do know that you have his favor, and are the next in line to his practice. Whatever that is. You're not entirely sure what will happen if you step up and claim the Silk Hat of the Doctor. It may be purely political position within the Hecata, or it may invest you with fantastic spiritual powers. It'll certainly invest you with the Doctor's enemies. Before you accept the role, however, you have the effects of Mala at 5 dots, although the help comes in cryptic ways and via mysterious actions. The Silk Hat is another one of those Hecata lore sheet leadership position roles. You're going to find a lot of these in a lot of the families, which we will eventually go over all of them because it does spread out through other books. This puts you in direct leadership of the entire nation of blood, Nasan Sanan. The Doctor is thought to be involved in the murder of Augustus Giovanni. What is going to happen to him because of this? Are there repercussions? Is the Doctor just going to step down? Is it time for him to be torpid? Is the Hecata actually suffering from the beckoning? All signs point to no on that one, but is there a reason why the Doc would be stepping down, or has the Doc gone missing, or is the Doc dead? That is up for your story to decide. But you, as an individual who has this point of the lore sheet, the Silk Hat, will be stepping into that position and getting all the benefits and negatives from that. Having a leadership role in a game, especially one of this magnitude, is I don't know. I really feel like it's a enjoy this story, but it might be time to put your character to pasture at that point. And those of you who know me, who play under me, or who storytell with me, will know that I'm massively against telling people that it's time to retire a character. I like the idea of letting them play out as long as they want to play out, or until they pass. Character-wise, not player. But this is kind of big. This is in charge of an entire faction of the Hecata. So, not really sure where I see this. I've never had anybody take this level of the lore sheet, and if they have, they've never enacted on claiming the Silk Hat. But I don't know. There is a lot to consider in that one. I'm kind of interested in knowing what your opinions are. So if you have anything that you want to say about the Silk Hat and what this actually means in gameplay, please be as descriptive as you want, but put that in the comments. I'm very, very curious in knowing what the community's thought is. So that was the lore sheet for the Nasan Sanan, the Nation of Bloodline Zemeti for the Hecata. There's a lot to unpack when it comes to the Zemeti. They are definitely an interesting aspect of the world of darkness. I kind of miss the old powers that they had. Thanatosis was a lot of fun. But I could also see some really fun amalgams being made up with like Oblivion and Obfuscate, Oblivion and Fortitude mixing together to give them something that seems theirs more than anything. Anyway, thank you for joining me on this lore sheet dig. I am Voivode Maquette. This is Our World of Darkness, and I will see you in the next video. Good evening.